Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies, coming at you with another Leviathan video, kind of. So you guys seem to enjoy me taking my second set of Leviathan Space Marines and converting them into Black Templars like I did with the Terminator Captain last week. And seeing how I was going to be doing the new Ballistus Dreadnought for my Black Templars, I thought why not make a video of it and get it converted up. I think by the end of this video you will know that I have a slight soft spot for Dreadnoughts in the sheer quantity of them that are currently in front of me right now fully painted. And I'll share them all with you at the end of the video. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do here today. I've 3D printed some extra parts to basically make my Ballistus Dreadnought look more Black Templary. And then I can use wedding, transfers, and all sorts of other bits and pieces to make it look as Black Templary as possible, and then get it painted up for you guys in today's video. Before I get started, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of my patrons. Without you guys, I would not be able to do any of the things that I am doing here today on this channel. If you would like to get involved in that, there's links to it below. Benefits include things like access to a private Discord server and an extra video every single week. So that's 52 extra videos a year just for you guys. Okay, without further ado, let's get working on a Ballistus Dreadnought. Okay guys, if you are paying attention to last Saturday's video, you will see the conversion work I did on the Terminator Captain from Leviathan, turning him into a Black Templars Terminator Marshal. And I'm using some parts from the same company, Grey Tide Studios. They're not sponsored or anything. I bought their files on a Kickstarter, I don't know, over a year ago now, I suppose a bit longer. And they have some beautiful Dark Angels on Black Templars files. And I have used their parts to convert up one Black Templars Dreadnought already. So I thought, why not do it the Ballistus one as well? So these are like shoulder panels. It's really hard to see them when they're in that red kind of printed color. But when I get it all sprayed up, you will see the difference this makes to a Dreadnought for sure. So the first things first is I need to cut out and get the Ballistus Dreadnought constructed, basically. So I need to take my time, cut out all the bits, get all the bits cleaned up, and then take it from there. I test fit after removing the supports. And remember that I have to remove all of the little bolts and nubs on those panels. So with a sharp scalpel and some patience, I'm being very careful. I remove all of those bolts with a little bit of careful trimming. And also on the opposite side, there is a crux terminatus built into the chassis that I also need to cut off in order to make sure that the panel on the far side also fits into the Dreadnought. Now, I didn't really think about the whole process of this being a push fit miniature before I started the printing process. So I actually printed off a huge front panel for this, but then remembered quite quickly that the front panel of this isn't removable. So unfortunately that won't get used in this one, which is okay. It's totally fine. Don't need to completely convert. If I used all of the parts, then it would look, I guess, too much like the previous one. Which, like I said at the start of the video, I will show you off all the Dreadnoughts I've done so far at the start. I also rated my Black Templar upgrade sprues. I think I have 3 of these now for some extra Black Templar symbols and a back banner and a broken sword. Well, it's actually a fixed sword, but then I had this kind of weird idea. My brain likes to think of stories when I'm building my miniatures. So you get this beautiful like sword that it gets bolted to the side of a tank, and it's in these like restraints. It's being held there, and it looks pretty sweet. And obviously this is a Ballistus Dreadnought, so I had this idea in my head to give this guy a little bit of a backstory. That at some point in his previous life, maybe the reason that he is now interred in this Dreadnought is obviously he was killed, but his sword failed him. He was in a duel with some other person, glorious chaos champion or the like. His sword failed him, broke, and it caused him to be mortally wounded and turned in a Dreadnought. He may be slightly bitter about this, so he's turned his back on the blade, preferring his chassis to be focused entirely on firepower and ranged combat. So I had this sword, and I decided as a memento of his previous life and the reason that he is now dead and interred in his Dreadnought, that we would take this sword and basically break it and cut it off until it was like this, and then I glued that in as like his, almost like the reverse of a trophy, so he always remembers the lessons. None of his other Black Templars brethren really do like his thoughts on the blade now, but we won't get into that. So here is the model fully constructed. Back banner, big beautiful belching smoke out of the engines. A million extra purity seals have been glued on, but I've also left some panels nice, flat and smooth, because I am a huge advocate for the humble transfer And if I could ever click my fingers and make every hobbyist think about transfers in a different light and use them more, I would do that in a heartbeat, because it really does up your game with miniature painting with very little effort. So I've followed the exact same painting guide that I've done for 2 other Black Templars Dreadnoughts on this channel so far. A standard Redemptor Dreadnought and the... what the hell is the close combo one called again? No, I can't remember. The close combat one anyway. I've done full videos on that, so I'm not going to talk too much about the stage by stage of how I painted this. If you enjoyed watching this video and you've decided that you want to try and paint your Black Templars Dreadnought to match my scheme, there is 2 other Dreadnoughts where I go into them fully. If you go back to the original one, the Redemptor Dreadnought, I think that's where I am the most in-depth tutorial on how I paint up my Black Templars Dreadnoughts and how I paint up all my Black Templars. My Black Templar collection is actually quite a large collection of Space Marine miniatures these days, and it's one of those forces where when I'm done and when I look at it on a shelf, I feel quite proud of it. So I think the scheme that I have envisioned or invented for doing it is, one, quite quick, and it does leave you with quite nice results. And yes, I am contrasting huge flat panels of power armor, and it works. You just got to learn how to use contrast properly. So obviously, like I said at the beginning, I did the Black Templars Terminator Captain so far, and now I'm moving on to the Ballistus Dreadnought. There's, of course, a couple of other units in the box set. The Terminators being one of them, the Stern Guard, and then the Emulator Squad, or whatever the hell you call them, which I can never remember what the Flamer Squad is remembered. It likes to just seep out of my brain. I'm not 100% sure whether the Flamer Squad will make it into my Black Templars. They are quite plain-looking miniatures, and I quite like my Templars having robes and stuff. I am 100% sure that the Terminators and the Stern Guard are going to make it in. Stern Guard are going to look absolutely stellar as Black Templars because they have those robes. And the reason I got a second set of Leviathan Space Marines is so I could have a Terminator squad for my Black Templars. So they are obviously getting done. And hopefully I will do them soon. I'm fairly sure I will dip into the Great Tide Studios vault of pieces once again and get some nice helmets, shoulder pads, and maybe some tilt shields that are specifically designed for Black Templars and make them look as nice as possible. And just a little bit different to the squad I did for my Flesh Tearers. This is another thing about, if this is the first Black Templars video you're watching on my channel, I'm not a huge fan of the black and the stark white for the shoulder pads and trim and stuff. So I actually go with a bone colored. When the miniature is painted, you don't even notice it. Your brain doesn't tell you that something's wrong with this Black Templars paint scheme. At least I don't think it is. Wait till the end. Check the final reveal of the Black Templar and tell me if you think you notice the white, whether it's... I think the bone just sits nicer against the paint scheme. It's a little bit easier to paint as well, I think. Although it does take a few coats. It is the most tedious part of painting that. After that, I move on to the Retributor Armor Gold and paint all of the trim and little detail parts. There is quite a few bits and pieces on this that I like to do with the gold trim. And it's obviously those conversion parts add those big, beautiful, almost like shoulder trim pieces up on top, which once again add to the ornateness that Black Templars usually hold quite close to themselves. Some purity seals are also gonna have little campaign badges as opposed to wax seals on them. So I went ahead and gave them all of the gold as well. You got to be careful that you're not going to go overboard with the gold, which I think is a possibility with conversions like this. But with that, all of the base coats are on, and it's time to shade the entire miniature down. And for that, I just throw a coat of Nuln Oil over all of it. Every last bit of it. Super pleased with how it's looking so far. I have been enjoying 10th edition so far immensely, and I think I may have my first game of 10th edition Black Templars this Saturday, or this Sunday, sorry. I have a game lined up, and I am very convinced to use my Black Templars for it. And give them a proper run out and get to use all the different new units that have yet to see a tabletop. And this Ballistus Dreadnought is definitely going to be one of them. Yeah, there's the slow stage, the bit that's going to take a little bit of extra time. That's where you go in with the Ushapti bone color. And unfortunately, I have to do 2 or 3 coats with this to get that pure color. And of course, we do this all across things like the paper seal parts of the purity seals, the cloth parts. They're all going to get done. And I think the idea or the problem that I was having with the white on Black Templars is all of the Black Templars tend to have these tabards running down the middle of them, which are that tan color. So then you have the tan down the middle and then the 2 white shoulder pads, and it just creates that like triangle of color, but the colors don't work. Whereas I feel when you have that same color I use for the robes applied to the shoulder pads and any other bits that are supposed to be white, it really does work. I could be totally insane and it might look absolutely awful, but I guess that's for you guys to decide. And the internet being as harsh as it is, I'm sure you will have no qualms about going on and telling me if you don't like it. And I will, like to hear whether you do like it or don't like it. One of my favorite stages now is transfers. I also do really like the stepping back, holding all the parts of a miniature, especially big things like tanks and dreadnoughts, having your transfer sheets and be like, all right, I can put one there and I can put one there, and what should go there and how big should it be there? I love that. It's such a fun part of the painting process for me. I have an entire A4 folder filled with transfer sheets, and I love going through them and trying to find the perfect little bits and pieces. Even when I was putting those Templar crosses on the shoulder pads, each one I had to cut a little tiny piece off of the bottom left corner so they'll fit with the purity seals on both sides. But once I'd done that, I gave the model a light dry brush of silver just to catch some of the edges of the black and make them look a little worn, and then moved on to the rest of the weathering. So I just used a sponge and some Corvus black paint, and then some iron hand steel, and just did a little bit of sponge weathering, which is just stippling on with the sponge, adding a little bit of chip. I always think of, I read every 40k Black Library book I can get my hands on, and whenever they talk about Space Marines or Dreadnoughts walking in a battlefield, they always talk about the amount of small arms fire pattering off their armor plates. And it may not damage any of the armor, but it's definitely going to chip the paint constantly. So all of these guys are always going to have these little specks of chipped paint. After every campaign, I'm sure they get lacquered up and made beautiful again. But in the heat of battle, absolutely not. And that's why I love adding weathering to my Space Marine forces. The big braziers, which kind of come out of the engine part of this, I just dry brushed up from red, orange, yellow, and then white on the back to give me a flame kind of motif. It's what I like to do for quick flames. And then pick the grates out from between the flames with the silver again. A bright yellow for the tips of all of the candles. To make it look like they're lit candles. Some pure white for all of the parts that I want to do the glowing lenses. There's only a couple of bits on those. I actually missed them on the arms, and I only noticed them at the very end. I'm taking the final shot, so I'll have to go back and add the white and the glowingness to those. But yeah, pure white, and then I add some green in for the lenses, and then for the big strobe light across his left shoulder, I added in some yellow contrast paint. And then once that's dried, I just paint the grate over that light again with a bit of silver. It's a very quick and easy way to do lights. These are all the finished parts of my new Ballistus Dreadnought for my Black Templars. So I just glued all of those bits together. Now, because I added those extra shoulder pieces, I can't add and remove those arms whenever it suits me. So I had to cut off the nibs and super glue them on, which I prefer. I don't like moving parts on miniatures anyway. Super glued in the kind of vents on the back, or the belching engine parts, which I love. I really need to print off more of these and stick them on all my dreadnoughts. And with that is the final result of my Black Templars Ballistus Dreadnought. I absolutely love the result. I love putting him next to the rest of my Black Templars Dreadnoughts and having him immediately match in and just being awesome. I have not yet come up with a name for him just yet, and I think a model like this deserves a name, especially since I've already given him his backstory. An ex-sword brethren that has been felled by a dodgy sword, maybe. So here is the Ballistus Dreadnought. And how many other Redemptor chassis dreadnoughts do you think that I own that are fully painted? Well, there's the third one for my Black Templars. And a fourth one for my Black Templars. One for my Executioner Space Marines. One for my Imperial Fist Space Marines. And last but not least, my other Ballistus Dreadnought for my Flesh Tears. That's 7 Redemptor chassis vehicles, and I love absolutely every single one of them. Hope you guys enjoyed me doing another Templars video. Do I need to say more? You've just seen 7 fully painted Redemptor chassis Dreadnoughts that I currently own, and it is by no means the end of my Dreadnought journey for Primaris. I just can't help doing more and more of them. I love them so much. So yeah, let me know in the comments below which one of the Dreadnoughts you've seen that is your favorite. I would like to know which one people actually like the most. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you give the video a like. Ask me any question you want in the comments below. I'll get back to each and every one of you guys. And if for some crazy reason you are not already subscribed to my channel, please take 2 seconds out of your day and smash that button. It really does make a huge difference. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in the next one.